Hey everybody, I'm a frog. Ribbit. Almost a year ago, I decided to do a zero-shot challenge where I saw if I could beat each Halo CE level on Legendary without firing a single shot. The goal back then was to just do it. Now though, I'm much better at both the game and the speedrun, so I decided to step it up a notch and try to beat each level without shooting as fast as I could. In the old video, my level times added up to 2 hours and 23 minutes. My goal for this video was to get the sum of my level times below the full game zero-shot Legendary record, which is 1:44:29 by Cordiaxis. I will just be going off the MCC timer though, so that means my timing isn't quite the same as Cordy's. And also, this isn't me playing it straight through like a full game run, I'm just adding my best times for every level. Nonetheless, that's the rules. CE Legendary, no shooting, fast as I can. As well, I'll have a video in the description that shows all my raw, unedited level runs with no commentary. Let's hop in. Pillar of Autumn begins with us running through hallways, and I don't have a gun, so I can't shoot.
Don't keep it loaded, son. You'll have...
Not to worry, Captain Keys, I won't be needing ammo. If you leave the bridge fast enough, you won't get the Magnum at all, or the first 3 grunt spawns, but you do get an AR. From there, I got blocked a little bit, but it was easy enough to run past the enemies that come into the cafe. Get back smacked, run past the enemies who come through the life pod. Here, if you jump through this barricade and keep enough enemies alive, you actually skip spawns. I almost died, but better luck next time, coveys. Then it was time for OS Hallway, which has 4 elites and a whole lot of grunts. It's hard enough to get through with shooting, so I didn't expect to get through first try, but I got lucky and did. After crouching under the door, I threw a plasma and ran by some more guys. Then at the stairs, I did a grenade jump. The stairs are followed up by one of my favorite grenade throws in the whole game. Grenade some more guys, smack smack, come out of the maintenance tunnel, back smack the grunt, stick that elite on the crotch, lay down another grenade to keep from being chased, and stick the elite at the end of the hallway. It should be noted that there is a trick called stair skip I could have done to skip everything from OS Hallway to about here, but I suck at it, so I didn't do it. With 1 red health and no ability to shoot, the ending was unsurvivable, so I went out of my way to grab a health pack. Then it was a breeze. I ran past some guys and grenaded the last few enemies, and that's Pillar of Autumn in 5:44. So first level, one of the easiest in the game. The next 2 levels, though, not so much. Halo is supposed to start with us crossing a bridge, but if I were to do that, I'd have to deal with 2 Banshees and a whole bunch of Covenant. So instead, I came over here and did a grenade jump up to skip the trigger. As you can see, there are no enemies. That means the first enemy encounter is here by the structure. At this first fight, I had to make sure to let the Covenant engage the Marines first, because if they all locked onto me right away, I'd be John Lennon, so I stayed patient. This elite noticed me and ran at me, which made taking him out very easy. This other elite showed me his back, which meant he was donezo, and the remaining grunts were easy from there. The first dropship has 2 elites on the right side, which makes them easy to stick. Then I fragged the other side and killed almost everyone. All my Marines were dead, which meant it was possible for me to do a trick called drop skip. Basically, if I cleared the next 2 ships fast enough, I would skip the following ship entirely, meaning I would only have to fight 4 drop ships instead of 5. Considering I was playing a shooter and was unable to shoot, this was essential. 2 grunts survived my grenades at the second ship, but that's just good enough for drop skip to still work, but unfortunately this made me late for the 3rd ship. I'd have to basically insta-clear the ship without having enough time to properly set up. It took quite a few attempts. While you watch me struggle, I'll take a second to mention I could have just ran past this entire section and not gotten the warthog. The problem is that it would be super slow, and I don't know how I would do the second half of the level without the warthog, so this was absolutely worth it. After about 3 minutes of trying, I managed to kill just enough enemies with my grenades to get the skip. There was still an elite and grunt alive though, so I had to take them out, and unfortunately that meant I was mega late for the last ship. This was really tough. I just threw myself at the enemies without much of a strategy until after a couple more minutes when I got lucky and was able to backsmack the elite. That's the tough part of the level out of the way. The rest was a breeze. By the light bridge, I was able to jump up and skip the enemies and go straight to activate it, skipping a bunch of combat. The second half of this level has 3 areas where you have to rescue Marines. But if the Marines are dead, you don't fail, the game just tells you to move on to the next area. So at Area 1, Cliff, I walked down and grenaded my own Marines. Area 1 done. At Area 2, I did something a little different. I drove up onto the rocks, splattered 1 Marine, and picked up the other 2 as passengers, most notably getting the Sniper Marine as a passenger. This removes them from the encounter, so as far as the game is concerned, they're dead. There's also other Marines down below, but the Covenant take care of them for us, letting me move on. At the last area, you have to kill all the Covenant regardless of if the Marines are dead or not, so I just ran over all the Covenant. Once they were dead, I ended the level with a launch.
Before we abandon
And that's Halo in 1645, which brings my total time so far to 22:29. Fun fact, there have been 8 NFL games that have ended with a final score of 22-29, the most recent being a Green Bay Packers victory over the Detroit Lions on November 23rd, 2023. Anyway, Truth and Reconciliation, TNR, was the next level, and this one I was expecting to be bad, but it was one of the biggest levels over the last year where I've learned some new stuff that would help. At the opening area, the strat is to hide behind a rock and let the Covenant start fighting the Marines before making a break for it. Then the second hardest part of the entire game happens. Let's do a roll call. There are 3 grunts, a jackal, and another grunt and a turret on top of the ridge. After moving up, another elite usually but not always jumps down as well. On the other side of the ridge, there are 2 more grunts waiting, plus another elite who runs from the next section, then 2 to 3 more grunts as well. And if I were to simply wait where I got the checkpoint, there'd be another red elite and a few more grunts who would run at me. So I had to navigate all of this without being able to shoot. My strategy was to try to stick the jackal, throw another grenade to the left to hold up the few grunts that rush you, stick the turret, grenade the grunts on top and below the ridge, and stick the elite who runs up. It took a few tries, but here's what it looked like when it finally worked. The next area is easy. You just run and grab an active camo and sneak past everything. Then at the lift, you can silently kill most of the enemies. And after killing enough enemies and pushing up, you're supposed to get a Covenant dropship and Marine reinforcements, but I messed up by actually killing too many enemies, which meant I started getting waves at the lift right away before I was ready, and I died. My second attempt was fine though when I got the dropship, and when the waves did start coming, I had reinforcements and was ready. On Legendary, you get 8 waves of enemies down the lift, but this was easier than I expected. The strat is basically just to try and time your grenades with the waves coming down, and then punch out whoever lives. The Marines being alive here helps a lot. They do a great job drawing enemy fire. Not at killing anything themselves though, at that they kinda suck. An important thing here though was managing my grenade count. At the end of this, I knew I needed to have 4 frags and 4 plasmas, so if I survived and didn't have that, I may as well restart anyway. After clearing out the main waves, you get a hunter wave, and you may be surprised, but it doesn't take that many melees to kill hunters in Halo 1, so all you do here is punch them out. My first try at this fight though, I took health damage and I decided to just revert. My second try, I killed them easily with no hiccups. But while I was waiting for Foe Hammer to come, I decided to double check that I was recording, and whenever I clicked back on MCC, I fired a shot, which meant I had to revert to my last checkpoint and fight the hunters again. Ay. Okay, now we're in the ship. My last time doing Zero Shot, I stayed in this main room and fought the 10 waves of enemies that spawn, which include jackals, grunts, and gold sword elites. But now I know a trick called belly skip that lets you skip this fight and some more fights in their entirety. Basically, you're clipping yourself into the Wraith, then doing some precise movements to get kicked out of the Wraith and up onto the ceiling. From there, we platform on the geometry. What you're watching is me running on the rafters on a specific path because most of the ceiling isn't solid and you'll fall right through. The trick ends with me coming back in bounds in the hallway before the big hangar. So after clearing these enemies, I moved onto the hangar where I was able to do one of the coolest grenade jumps in the game. The reason you can do that is because you're invincible in Halo C while an overshield is charging. Otherwise, those grenades would have killed me. Next up is the bridge, where my first try died because a gold sword elite has moves. Second try though, easy enough. I was loaded on grenades, plus there are more hidden in the previous hallway if you need them, so easy enough. Next couple hallways, also easy. The first prison block you can enter is empty, but there is an active camo, so I grabbed that, made my way to where Keys is held, and backsmacked all the guards. On the Keys escort, there also isn't much to say. I tried to keep ahead of him, grenaded some enemies, thankfully didn't get killed or kill himself. The bridge took a couple tries. My first attempt, Keys got smacked, but I got it my second try, and while you're watching that, I'll explain how this level ends. So after killing these elites, Keys and the Marines have a bunch of dialogue, and then you're supposed to fight back to the hangar where you steal a Covenant dropship. Without getting into too much detail, basically the grenade jump we did earlier breaks this a bit. So after killing the elites, Keys and the Marines say their lines of dialogue, you know, the "we're trapped in here, we're screwed, man." And then the level just ends there for a time of 17:29, bringing me to a total of 39:58.
Dude, 39:58? It takes me that long just to get through one level.
Silent cartographer, more like silent car frographer. The level starts with me going the complete opposite direction of the beach fight and taking a leisurely stroll until I get to an overturned Puma. With it, I can drive to the main facility, bringing it in, and bypass a door that locks by flinging myself through. Then after sitting through the shafted cutscene, I can drop down below just right so that I can survive the fall and not die from fall damage. One more fall, and then we're at the silent cartographer and didn't need to fight basically anyone. Now it's just a matter of getting back up.
I underestimated the Covenant's understanding of Halo subsystems. They've locked us. We don't have enough firepower to get...
Easy enough. With the overshield, I was able to just run the rest of the way, then drive out and board the Pelican. And with that, that's Silent Cartographer in 3:32, bringing my total up to 43 minutes and 30 seconds. I hope you like tricks, because more tricks are on the way. I'm not going to go too much into detail on the opening of Assault in the Control Room. I grenaded and meleeed enemies and made my way through the first hallway and room until I got out to the bridge. Then I did this. Then I did this.
Environment systems are malfunctioning, or if the designers wanted the installation to have inclement weather.
This is Fire Team Zulu requesting immediate assistance from any UN...
So Halo 1 doesn't have vehicle hijacking, but if we maneuver just right, we can get the Elite to fly into the wall and get himself ejected from the Banshee. It's like when you flip your vehicle and get kicked out. We're causing that to happen to the Elite so we can take it. That skips triggers, so there's no more enemies the remainder of the mission, and I can mostly just fly through, although there are a couple more tricks. When we come up to the next set of bridges, instead of getting out, I fly the Banshee inside. Once in the next room, I can park the Banshee and with some melees and movements do something cool. That's called a Banshee teleport, but personally, I think the second outside of the control room is even cooler than the first. So that's Assault on the Control Room in 4:52 for a total thus far of 48 minutes and 22 seconds. Next up, the level I was too scared to play as a kid. 343 Guilty Spark. I skipped encounters by going left at the start, where you can find a rock that we speedrunners call the Rock Boss because it's actually kind of tough to jump off of. And with some jumping, we can get to the entrance of the facility in about the first 30 seconds of the level without fighting anyone. Taking the elevator down, I drop off kind of a specific way, and you're supposed to go through a door on the right side of the room, but I'm walking on the left side, and after the last two levels, I'm sure you can surmise, unless you're stupid, that I'm gonna do another trick. I grabbed a health pack, waited for shields, then did a grenade jump. So basically, there's a glass light thing that has weird geometry where if you grenade jump, you can actually go into it and into the ceiling above you. From there, with some specific movements, you bounce across a gap without actually jumping, and then you can platform into a room that you're not supposed to be able to get into until after the flood shows up. This takes you almost right to the second elevator. And after the second elevator, we do a trick called Camo Jumo. It used to be called Camo Jump until one random night in a Skype chat where someone misspelled it, and it was so funny that 10 years later, everyone still calls it Camo Jumo. With the active Camo and Camo Jumo, you can run almost to the very end while camouflaged, assuming you know the route. In the final room, you're supposed to actually go back and jump up on a box and cross a light bridge. Instead, I did a grenade jump called Subnade. I died. My second try, though, I went on the other side and made it. The benefit of doing this, instead of going across the light bridge, is it skips triggers, so there's no flood waiting for you in the elevator room. The end of the level has you run to this structure out in the swamp where Spark and a couple Sentinels spawn. The level end trigger on Legendary is tied to those two Sentinels dying, so all I did here was run around and wait for the flood to kill them. Once they did, the level ended, and my time was 5 minutes on the dot, which brings me to 53:22 in total. Unfortunately, this ends the run of trick-heavy levels, and next we have complete and utter dog shit. The library on Legendary without shooting. Oh boy. So to start, I moved up to trigger Guilty Spark, then I backtracked and did a grenade jump. With this grenade jump, you can get to the center part of the bottom floor with the index. From there, you can move up through a door, backtrack a little bit, and trigger Guilty Spark again. There's a few flood that are pre-spawn, but otherwise there's no flood before the first door if you do this. You can also flood bump and not need to get Spark at all, but I decided to do it this way rather than try to flood bump without shooting. And if you don't know what a flood bump is, don't worry because I do 0 on this level anyway. After the first door, we start to get spawns, and this is, in my opinion, the toughest part of the entire level 0 shot. I start by throwing a frag grenade trying to get some flood hiding around the corner, then I just book it trying to dodge enemy fire and let my shields come back. Then it's more running and praying. There is a health pack here, so that's nice, and I'm able to drop down into a hole that has over shields and grenade jump out. Then there's some more running. You're supposed to have enemy spawns before the elevator, but there were enough enemies from earlier still alive that I skipped the spawns, so that's cool. And that's floor 1. The second floor starts with a door where you're supposed to hold out and wait for Spark, but you can actually just turn around after hitting the trigger and wait, and no flood spawn. Following the door, instead of running where you're supposed to, I went around the center ring to avoid enemies. Then there's another door I could have grenade jumped through, but I decided to save the nade. And then after that door, there's a group of flood that spawn you can take out with a frag, and you know, there's a few flood, and I was hoping for grenade drops, and all I got was one frag. So the frag I threw back. Whatever. The tunnel below has a bunch of carriers. Then when you come out, you get ambushed. Same thing, bunch of flood, I was hoping for grenade drops, and after taking them all out, I realized I had literally 0. I was out of grenades, and somehow no one dropped anything. I backtracked a ways for a health pack because I knew I'd need it. There were some more gun flood I needed to run by, but more importantly, there was carrier hallway where there's a bunch of carriers and a rocket flood. I got extraordinarily lucky because I basically didn't get shot by the first group of flood, and then the rocket flood deleted his own Minecraft account. There were a few more flood to run by, but that's second floor. At the start of the third floor, me and the Sentinels ganged up on the flood, and I got 2 grenade drops. I would need both of those for this, which we call Cancer Hallway. My first attempt, I died. My second attempt, I killed all but 1 flood who I baited back and then jumped over and ran past. The problem once again is that I had 0 grenades, and another really tough part was coming up, that being Dark Door, another door where you have to hold out for Guilty Spark. Unlike the previous, there is no cheesing this one. If you leave the trigger, the floods still spawn and they can chase you, and the door will take 3 times as long to open. After the first few spawns, this door is mostly just infection forms and carriers, so I did leave for a second and run back to Cancer Hallway to draw some of the combat forms and outrun them back so they lost track of me. But when I got back, there were 4 more combat forms waiting for me. I did kill 1 with a carrier, but for the most part, my strat here was to run around and try not to die. And after many agonizing seconds, the door opened and I bolted through. Similar thing to earlier, I ran around the inside ring going counterclockwise, which takes longer but avoids more flood spawns. Then finally, I found a pile of 3 frag grenades. We are so back. Then there's some more running through hallways, then a door where you get locked in, and on Legendary, you're supposed to hold out for 90 seconds. You can just hide in the corner and no flood will come at you, but I had an even better plan, which is a trick called Light Bump. Basically, you get lodged into the door you came in from and press some buttons and get teleported on top of the door. Then you can jump into the ceiling and with a somewhat precise lineup, hold left and teleport past the doors entirely. This skips waiting the 90 seconds as well as the mini flood that spawn once the doors open. And that's floor number 3. The last floor is easy. There's a few flood to run by, then I grenade jumped into another place where you hold out. This time I just hid in the corner. Then you go to the final door and do a grenade jump to skip the big fight, run to the end, and that's the library without shooting on Legendary in 18 minutes and 29 seconds, putting my total time to this point at 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 51 seconds. Not to brag, but I would just like to mention that so far every level has been under the par time. 2 Betrayal starts with the toughest part of the entire game. There are 4 Sentinels. You have 2 plasma grenades. Good luck. I started by rushing the Sentinels. The first one I stuck was stupid and floated by another one, giving me a double kill. My second stick only killed the one I stuck, which meant I had 1 more Sentinel to deal with and no plasma grenades to deal with. My strat? Wait for him to float down and then punch him. It took a couple minutes, but it worked. I bet you didn't know you could backsmack Sentinels. This second hallway is tough too. So after there's only 1 Covenant left alive, a second wave with an Elite and 2 Jackals spawn. So I wanted that wave to come with as many Sentinels alive as possible. So I grenaded the first group. Then I let the Sentinels in wave 2 fight it out a bit. The Sentinels too, by the way, they put in a lot of work. The Elite was really weak when I pushed up, so easy enough. Just kidding. There was a hiding Sentinel who snuck up on me. I was so mad. Just like that Mercer Mayer book. Nonetheless, same strategy, worked the second time, easy enough. On the door to exit, you can press the button twice with a certain timing to do a deload where the door opens but the game still thinks it's shut. So outside of 2 Elites and Jackals that are pre-spawn, no other enemies spawn. After dispatching them, I could go down the pyramid and grab a Banshee. You do have to fly back up to hit the button again, but yeah, it's way safer than not doing the deload. At the first generator, I flew the Banshee in the hallway, then hit the generator, ran past the Sentinels, then parked the new Banshee that spawns in the corner of the door. If you've seen a Halo speedrun before, you know what's going to happen, and if you haven't, prepare to have your mind blown. With the Banshee inside, in a similar mechanic with the Elite earlier, you're able to fly straight up to eject yourself out of bounds on top of the map. This hallway has 2 load zones, one for the generator and one for the outside, so I platformed over to hit the load for the generator, meaning the outside is no longer loaded in. From there, I'm able to platform to the Banshee I parked by the door, and we are now in the Banshee. This isn't an ordinary Banshee, though. This is a Banshee that can fly through everything, letting me go through the level. Kind of. The way 2 Betrayals works is you have to hit every trigger in order, so I'm flying to those spots, waiting a second, and then moving on to the next one. After I get far enough, I go back to the first generator and do what's called a BSP load, where I exit the Banshee to load in the world and re-enter while it's still out of the level. Then there's a second BSP load, then some more triggers to hit, including the second pulse generator while in the Banshee, then a third BSP load, then a final load past the broken door. Except I messed it up and had to ram the Banshee through the door the old-fashioned way. So at this point, you're not even supposed to have a vehicle. But having a Banshee obviously makes this way easier and means I don't need to shoot. At the final run, the reason why we have to hit all those earlier triggers is because of one trigger specifically, the 5 flood trigger. In order for us to complete the mission, 5 flood have to die here. So I toss a couple nades where a few spawn, hope they die, and let the Covenant kill some more. Then bada bing, bada boom, do some more flying, hit the last gen, and that's 2 betrayals in 13:51 for a total so far of 1 hour, 25 minutes, and 42 seconds. Let's go find my car keys. So keys starts with me doing a manipulation via my controller inputs to cause the first flood that spawns to be a reviver. A reviver flood is one of those flood where after you knock them down the first time, they get back up. That flood we can bait back to where we spawn, then punch him a bit, stand on him, and when he gets back up, we get pushed through the wall. This actually takes us right outside where Captain Keys is. So, a minute 15 into the level, we're already at the Keys cutscene. Worth noting again, for this video my times are just the MCC times. Those don't count cutscenes. If you were to submit a keys time to HaloRuns.com, you would count this cutscene. So just an FYI. After the cutscene, you can throw a distraction grenade where if the enemies see it before they notice you, they just stare at it, letting you run by. Then I dropped down below, waited for the Banshees, and then the level's just on a timer. So I ended Keys with an, again, MCC time of 2:11 for a total of 1 hour, 27 minutes, and 53 seconds. One level left. Let's see where I end up. The Maw starts with me running, then skipping a trigger just by going through too fast and standing in a corner by a door that the flood bashed open, which puts me on top of the map where I can do more platforming. It should be noted, this is the toughest platforming in the entire game. It sucks. I hate it. It's really hard. Even on this, I messed up and had to revert at one point. But if you do it right, you'll end up coming back inbounds after the cryo room, skipping a pretty big chunk of the mission. I grabbed an overshield and some grenades because I needed to make sure I had full grenades for the reactors and made my way into the engine room. On Legendary, you need 2 grenades to blow up a reactor. So I would throw a plasma and a frag. The first reactor I kinda messed up and had to split up, but I was able to get them on the first side just fine. On the second side, I got super lucky and there were just no flood around, so I was able to blow them up with no resistance whatsoever, and that was all 4 reactors. The other part of the level I was worried about was this elevator with a whole bunch of Spec Ops Covenant. I did this. I was very surprised to survive that my first try. Then it was driving time where I slalomed and tried not to flip. I did 360 swag. That was more like 270, but whatever. And with pretty good barrels, I was home free. That's the Maw in 8 minutes and 13 seconds, which puts my final time at 1 hour, 36 minutes, and 6 seconds. That's over 47 minutes faster than my old video. Get wrecked, old frog. And with cutscenes, that would put me at around 141, so I also hit my goal of my sum of best being faster than the current world record. Although obviously that record was Cordiaxis doing it all in one sitting straight through rather than just adding up his best times. So not the same. So if you like this video, you can click the old Zero Shot video on screen to see firsthand for yourself how things were different. Thanks to all my patrons whose names are now on screen for helping to support the channel. If you would like to become a patron, there's a link in the description. I'll catch you next time.